Welcome everybody to the Nobody Listens to Kevin podcast, where I tell you the truth about life and relationships that you are not going to hear anywhere else. Today I want to talk about what to do if you are the giver. If in your relationships you tend to be the person who gives a lot, and probably fairly often you feel that you are taken advantage of, or that your kindness is mistaken for weakness, or that you end up in situations where you are hurt, right? So if this sounds common, or if you know somebody who tends to be the giver, send this episode to them. There are a few points that are really important to make about being the giver, particularly in terms of getting into a relationship with somebody who is a taker. It might be of use to you to change your ways a little bit. This is coming from somebody who used to be the perpetual giver. In all of my relationships, I was always bending over backwards for the other person, until I realized that there are a few problems with that, and I wasn't actually seeing things the right way. So, first thing that I want you to understand is that in every relationship, there's going to be somebody who is naturally more giving and somebody who's naturally less giving. Okay? Now that can go one of two ways. Either it's a situation where you're a giver and they're a taker. That's something you want to avoid. You want to avoid a situation where you're giving, and the other person is taking, and you always secretly feel resentful, but you feel like you need to give more in order to win their attention. Okay? Now, the other scenario is one in which one person is naturally more giving, the other person is naturally less giving, but person B wants to learn how to become more giving, right? In other words, two people don't have to give at the same level right off the bat, because it might come more easily to one person than to the other. But what you want to look for is this person truly a taker, or is this person exhibiting characteristics and qualities that they would like to learn how to become more giving, more generous, more loving, more affectionate? If they would like to learn how to become those things, it's not necessarily a problem that they don't know how right off the bat, and that you are naturally more giving. If the person is just kind of selfish, and when you express your needs, they dismiss it, they don't listen, they think that you're the problem. They're also selfish in other areas of their life, such as business or with family or with their time, right? Then you've got a situation where you're the giver, they're the taker, and you're probably going to repeat this cycle where you give, and the other person takes, and then you end up feeling resentful, hurt, and then you walk away from that and you say, I'm always so giving and I'm always so nice, and other people take advantage of me, okay? Now, there are a few problems with that scenario. The first one is this cruel joke, which is that the givers and the takers tend to find each other, right? Because the giver needs someone to whom they can overgive, and the taker needs someone from whom they can take, right? Obviously, we don't want to be in that situation because it leaves you feeling hurt and unseen and unheard and unworthy, okay? But the other problem with being with a taker is that the giving that you're doing is only partially for them. A lot of the giving that you are doing is actually selfishly motivated, okay? And this is something that doesn't get talked about a lot. If I'm in a relationship with somebody who I can see they're selfish, they don't have very much regard for my needs, they're not actively making efforts to learn about what I want and to give me those things, and I stay in that relationship and I keep giving to them, why am I doing that? It is not only because I'm so generous and I'm so loving. Part of the reason that I'm doing that is for my own validation. It is so that I can try to win their attention and their affection. It is so that they essentially breadcrumb me over and over again, but then one day they're going to give me the full meal, and that's going to make me feel amazing. That's going to make me feel like my giving worked. So that's where there's a difference between caring and caretaking. It's good to be a carer. It's not good to be a caretaker. Being caring is when you're affectionate, you're generous, you're loving, you're giving, etc. Caretaking occurs when you bend over backward to make the other person happy at your own expense, silently hoping that that will engender some sort of response, right? That will create some sort of positive outcome. When you're caretaking with somebody else, you are essentially setting yourself on fire in order to keep the other person warm. And the crazy thing about that is that it's not because you're such a good giving person. There's a selfish motivation because you want something from the other person. And that's where we get into hot water. So let me give you the analogy of the apple pie, okay? Let's say that I'm a really giving and thoughtful person. And I wake up one morning and I decide to bake an apple pie for my partner. And I know my partner tends to be a little bit more selfish. They're not as kind as I am. They're not as thoughtful or generous as I am. But I really want to do this kind thing. So I bake them the apple pie, okay? Then I take the apple pie to my partner. They take one bite of it. They say, "Oh, great, thanks." And then they dump it in the trash. Okay. What most people do is they wake up the next morning and they say, "You know what? I'm going to bake this person 2 apple pies." So now you spend all this time and effort and you really put love into it. You bake 2 apple pies, and then you take both apple pies to your partner and they take one bite of it and they say, "Oh, thanks, babe." And then they dump both apple pies in the trash, right? The analogy here is meant to explain the point that you're not going to make somebody appreciate you by giving them more of what they already don't appreciate. Let me say that again. You're not going to make someone appreciate you by giving them more of what they already did not appreciate. So when you baked the first apple pie and your partner took a bite of it and then threw it in the trash, baking them 2 or 3 or 4 of them, in other words, continuing to give, is not going to make them appreciate the fact that you're doing this for them. They clearly didn't want the first apple pie in the first place, right? Now, here's the big mindfuck, excuse my language. Most people listen to what I'm saying here and they think, "Oh, okay. So then the solution is to not bake the apple pie. The solution must be to be less giving." And that's where they go wrong. The solution is not to be less giving, because then you're ending up like the person who's throwing the apple pie in the trash. The solution is to continue giving, but to give to the right person, right? So when people have been hurt one too many times, they say, "You know what? I'm not going to be generous anymore. I'm not going to be thoughtful anymore. I've been screwed over before. I'm going to be on guard and I'm going to wait until you prove yourself to me, and then I'll decide if I want to be giving to you." And that's completely the wrong approach. That's going to make you resentful. It's going to make you guarded. It's going to make you appear selfish. And it's going to turn the other person off, especially if they're a genuine person who wants to get to know you and wants to give to you. If you take that approach, eventually the other person is going to say, "What are you, like, sussing me out? You're taking way too long to respond to my texts. I'm getting you a gift. You're not getting me a gift back. Like, why are you so on guard? Who hurt you?" Right? The fact that you're naturally giving and generous and loving is a beautiful thing. The problem is just that you were giving and loving and generous to the wrong person in the past. In other words, there is no such thing as too much giving. There is only such a thing as giving to the wrong person. okay? And you should never let those experiences douse that fire in you. If you are naturally a giving and loving person, that's an absolutely beautiful thing. And I'm sorry that you've gone through it where people have taken advantage of your kindness, right? But remember, one, your kindness was partially selfishly motivated, and that's on you. Two, now you know the difference between when somebody is truly a taker and they're going to be selfish versus when somebody, it doesn't come as naturally to them, but they want to learn. And three, now you know that you can't keep giving somebody the same thing over and over again, expecting them to appreciate it and reciprocate it. Now that doesn't mean that you stop giving. It means that you change direction and you find somebody who does want to give to you and reciprocate at the same level. So if you know somebody who's a giver, please send them this episode. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.